Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Jackie, here we are, the end of June, and this is our number 94 Fun Chat. Isn't that fun?
Indeed. And many more to go.
And we say hi to each of you listening and watching and just enjoying this 1950s Fun Chat. Jackie, what do you think about today? What we're going to do with this Fun Chat today?
Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone. And secondly, I have a couple of housekeeping duties that I need to do. And that is, please, I ask you to look in the bottom of the screen and you'll see www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. That is our website. And there, please do check it out because it talks about the book, the authors, the events where we have been and will be. It talks about the Fun Chat, and it talks about the vendors. So please do go there. There's a lot of information there. Secondly, look in the upper right-hand corner, and on the cover of our book, you'll see a beautiful North Dakota sunset. Wraps around the book, and then, of course, there's the windmill, and the windmill has a special duty inside the book. He has a job, and he does it well.
And we call him. And
yes, we call him, the windmill, yes. And we're so glad to have that character there in the story. Also, look at the little white spot on the right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner. That is a special award the book received. And the book was published in 2021. In 2022, this award was given. It is for a distinguished favorite in the regional category, presented by the Independent Book Press Award. Independent Press. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Janine. And this was in the regional category. So that means that in this book talked about a specific region. So enough of that. Let's get on with welcoming our guest. Her name is Renae Doan, and she was born in 1956 in Bismarck, North Dakota, and grew up on a farm southeast of Bismarck and in a family of 8 children. Her father was a carpenter and her mother a housewife. Now, Renae has been married to Jerry for 49 years. They have 4 children and 12 grandchildren. That includes 1 set of twins. They live on a ranch homesteaded in 1882 by Jerry's great-grandfather and in a house that her dad built. Cool. Renae has been a 4-H leader for 47 years. Good for you, Renae. She has worked for the North Dakota legislature since 1977. Many of those years as the administrative assistant to the Senate Majority Leader, a position she still holds. So welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat, Renae.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. So during the decade of the 1950s, there were still some one-room schools on the prairie. Many of these consolidated with neighboring districts or simply closed. So please tell us about your one-room school experience.
Well, gosh, I went to a one-room school from 1st through 4th grade. There were, we rode horse to school most of the time, my brothers and I had a little Shetland, and most mornings he would buck me off. I'd stand up, he'd kick me in the stomach, I'd get back on, and we'd proceed to school.
Mercy.
Yeah, I never learned. But once at school, we would tie up the horses behind the school, and they would eat there for the day while we were in school. And we would always take a potato wrapped in tinfoil and put it on the coal stove to cook for lunch. And by the time it was lunchtime, it was ready, and that's what we had. And the families all took turns bringing a jug of water each week. I think a different family had that responsibility because there was no indoor plumbing in the school. So we had an outdoor bathroom. And we did the traditional Christmas programs where you put up the sheets around, you had a wire, you put up the sheets around that, and you actually did the program. And people would come in on whatever night it was, and Santa Claus would come and bring your traditional bags with the peanuts and the hard candy and the apples or oranges. And, we were thrilled to get that. So, and the school, I was the only one in my grade, first and second grade. So when I was in second grade, I did all the work of the third graders. So I got a pass from second to fourth grade. And so then in fourth grade, there were 3 of us in that grade.
Nice. Did you enjoy having those classmates?
Well, we were all in the same room anyway. We had those wood desks, and we had the ink wells and all that kind of stuff in there, where the top on the desk opened up, and that's where you kept your belongings. And one thing I would say is, because I did get past, skip that grade, and it was a great feature, and I was ready academically, emotionally, and I wasn't growing up. By the time I got to high school, I was not growing up emotionally as some of the others. And so other people were dating, and I wasn't old enough. And, I wasn't mature that way. So I would never do that to one of my children. And, I think times have changed anyway, but then it was more of a necessity because we had one teacher and, for all 8 grades. And so that was hard for her to do all those different studies. And then when I was in the 5th grade, they consolidated Telfer number 1 and Telfer number 2, meaning they bought a piece of land and they moved those 2 schoolhouses together. And yes, and they built a room in between them, and we actually had indoor plumbing then.
Oh, well, good for you.
Nice.
Yes.
Something you didn't have at home, huh? Did you have indoor plumbing at home?
By that time I did, but up until 1961, I did not.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yes.
At the Telfer schools, Renae, did you participate in the Burleigh County Play Days at the end of the school year, where you'd come to Menoken and there would be academic contests as well as athletic type contests, the baseball throw, the long jump, the high jump?
I do not remember ever doing that. We participated in the spelling bee, and we did YCL.
Yes.
Those type of things, but I don't remember ever coming to Menoken School to do that. And it may have been that there wasn't transportation for us to do that. Because the teachers couldn't do that, and most of the families down in our area were quite large and doing other things. So that may have been why not.
Yeah,
but we did do the other things.
So tell me, where did your teacher reside, or did she go from family to family?
No, our teacher actually lived out in the country, Mrs. Andrews, and so she stayed at her home, and she was there for the 1st through 4th grades that I had her. And then when we consolidated, I had Mrs. Gertrude Heim, and she also actually just lives south of our ranch now, probably 4 or 5 miles from where I live now. But they were both really great teachers. Actually, Mrs. Andrews lived just south here also. And I always wished I could have gotten her books of Christmas program plays and things, because those were so fun to go through and pick out those plays that we did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We were
what
fortunate.
A great time.
Go ahead.
Yes, what a great time to be in what country school, or because of the opportunities for memorization. We might not have thought of it at the time, but those Christmas plays and programs, and who knows, throughout the year, even in classwork, we were required to memorize, and it was a great skill to have learned.
Yes, we had to memorize all those parts, and it was a big deal to get one of the big parts in the plays.
Oh, yes.
And to memorize the most lines and things, and those are back in the old chalkboard days too, where we did a lot of work at the chalkboards, and so yeah, I loved the Christmas programs. They were probably the highlight.
Right. Yeah, we can relate to that.
Yeah,
to the feeling. Yeah. So please share the story of how a newly built Roman Catholic church happened to have been given the name of your grandmother.
Okay.
That's a great story.
Well, when my grandfather came from Wisconsin, he was the head of a construction crew, and the St. Alexis Hospital wanted to build an addition. So this company came from Wisconsin to do that. And while they were there, the Bishop of Bismarck area called him in and asked him if he would take part of his crew out to Menoken, because the community out there wanted to build the Catholic church. And my grandfather was Catholic. And so he took his crew out there, and they built this church, which is now St. Hildegard's. But while he was there, my dad, who was on his crew, met the daughter of one of the families, and they struck up a romance and ended up being the first ones married in this church also. But after the church was built, the bishop called my grandfather in to meet with him and to pay him, and he gave him a check. And my grandfather never looked at the check. He said, "I don't want to get paid. The only thing I would like is if you would name this church after my late wife, who had died. A couple of the kids in the family had gotten a disease, and she contracted it. And so anyway, none of us know to this day how much that check was for, because no one ever looked at it. But that's how the church became St. Hildegard's Mission. That was my grandmother's name, and she just happened to have a saint's name.
Yes. And how has the church changed? Because it is still operational out at Menoken, correct?
Yes, it is.
Has it changed over the years?
Yes, there have been some inside changes to it where they've renovated the position of some things. The altar is still up front where it is supposed to be, but they did build a little addition onto the side where they have an office, and made the basement usable. They built in a kitchen. I remember being up there with my dad painting while he was constructing, the kitchen and different things like that. They've widened, not the structure hasn't widened, but they've opened it up in there more. And right now they are in the process of building it's another building. It's not really connected, but it's going to be used for youth classes and things like that. And that is to the east of the rectory, which is where the priest lives. And we're fortunate to still be able to have priests that want to serve out there. Of course, the bishop tells them where they have to serve, but but they do like being out there. We still have our fall dinner every year. And that's the Sunday after Labor Day. And a lot of people come to that. We do the sausage, which was my grandfather Richter's recipe. And so we still follow that and get together and make all that. And yeah, it's really, it's growing a lot as far as people, but the size of it hasn't really grown tremendously.
Can you tell our viewers where St. Hildegard's is located?
Sure. It's on Highway 10, just to the east side of Menoken. So it's right along the highway.
Right.
Yes.
So were there ever any sisters, any nuns out there, or did they come out from Bismarck and then go back into Bismarck? Or were there any who lived there?
The nuns would come out in the summertime when we'd have our CCD classes. So we'd have 2 weeks of that, but they didn't live out there. They would commute from Bismarck. We've had a number of priests come out of the families in the St. Hildegard's family. So, yeah, and I have two of them from my mom's family. Her brother has two sons that are priests, and then there's more down the line. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
we're fortunate.
Yep,
All
the
right.
tradition continues.
So, with reminisce for a time concerning the rural living conditions of the 1950s in your family. You had quite a number of children and problems or not problems, but positive and negative. Can you name a few, please, of those conditions? And then you're okay.
I grew up, well, like you said, I was born in 1956, and I grew up on a farm southeast of Bismarck, about 18 miles. It was the old George Register farm, and we had 2 bedrooms in there, one for my mom and dad, and the other for the children at the time. I lived in there until 1961, and so my 4th brother, right before he was born, we moved out of there. So there were 3 older brothers, myself, and my sister in there that stayed in that bedroom. Except she was probably in my mom's room, mom and dad's room most of the time in the crib. But we did not have indoor plumbing in that house. So until we built a basement house, we didn't have any indoor plumbing. We would carry water from the windmill, hence your windmill, bring it into the house, boil it to wash dishes, warm it up to do take baths. We had a big old metal tub that everybody would take baths in, and we'd all take turns use the same water because nobody wanted to go out and carry more water in. Also, and this probably people think this is really grotesque, but we didn't have an indoor bathroom, so we had an outdoor one. But when it was cold and in the winter, we had a 5-gallon bucket, and that's what we would use, and then take it out, and dump it. But that was, we didn't know any different. We also had a root cellar off in one of the rooms to the side where the same room actually you went down in there that we took baths in, and I hated that thing. You go down there, it was a room, and you'd go down the ladder, and there were snakes and salamanders. It was disgusting, but it kept your canned food and potatoes and carrots and all that kind of stuff. It kept them for all of the winter, long until we used them up because of the temperature down there. We did have a party line telephone. I don't remember quite when we got it, but I remember the party line telephone, and everybody knew what everybody else was doing. And, you couldn't wait for people to get off the phone so somebody else could use it.
Right.
We had a gas stove, and my mom would use a metal curling iron. She'd heat it up on the stove and then curl my hair. And I'm sure that's why my hair doesn't grow now. It's because it was all burned off. But and we did. I remember getting a little TV, black and white, small TV. It was probably 10 inches, and we used the rabbit ears and the tinfoil so we could get the Walt Disney and United, all that kind of stuff on there. Of course, there was only 2 channels, but that was a big deal to have that.
It was, yes.
Growing up back then, we all learned to work hard, to pitch in. I learned to cook very early, and I didn't have any problem doing it. So it was a necessity.
It was part of family life, and would you say that each of your siblings had a certain responsibility in your family?
Everybody had to help out. So it wasn't so much each assigned a responsibility, but everybody pitched in and knew what had to be done, so you got it done. We milked cows. We did, the square bales. We everybody had a big garden, so we did that, and everybody helped there. You help with the kids. We had to iron our clothes, wash clothes, hang them out on the clothesline because there were no dryers.
Yeah.
And actually, we had the old wringer washer, and we had that for many years. And after we got I want to call it a real washing machine, my mom would use that wringer washer to make butter. So
Really?
yeah,
Good.
Unique.
we milked cows, and then we would separate that milk, and we would sell milk to Schultz's Creamer in Bismarck. Take the cans in, and but anyway, I hated washing that cream separator. Oh my God, all those discs. That was the terriblest job. You remember. But yeah, we could make a lot of butter in that washing machine, and we didn't have to crank it all the time like we had to do before.
That's really ingenuitive.
Yeah, but then washing that thing.
Yeah. So, well,
Keeping it clean.
we didn't have to use it for clothes anymore. Yeah, at that point.
Oh, goodness. So it seems as though that your childhood perhaps prepared you for your life now, although you probably didn't realize it, because as a ranch wife, you wear many hats, and then you learned as a youngster how to share responsibilities, but maybe you have individual responsibilities of your own. So what are those hats that you might, there are probably more hats that you wear than you'll be able to think of, but what are some of them?
Oh, well, now anybody who's a farmer ranch wife knows that you wear all the hats. You help where you need to. You're a parts runner, you're the cook, you're out in the field if you need to, you work cattle. The worst job is, the sorting cattle, and it's the in and buy game, because they're always yelling in or buy after the cow's already halfway where she's not supposed to be.
Right.
But there's just so many things that we do. Keep the books. I don't so much take care of the paying the bills and stuff now as I used to. I used to do all of that, but Jerry has taken that over, fortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But and with all our grandkids too, we have 12. I take care of those a lot. Yesterday I had 5 of them here, including the twins, which are really getting a personality of their own, but so that the others can do their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So, you just do whatever needs to be done on a farm or a ranch. That's just the way you're raised to do.
Mm-hmm. And do all of your grandchildren live near you?
They're all, let me see, relatively close. I would say everybody is within 25 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So they are my youngest son, Jace, who has the twins, and then the 2-year-old. He lives down in the south part of our ranch, which is down towards Braddock. And so he's up here every day. And he brings his 2-year-old up a lot of times, but he has most of the buffalo down at his place. And then we have some up here, but the little 2-year-old just loves to come up. He is infatuated with tractors, as most kids are at that age.
Uh-huh.
Today I have 2 of the grandsons here. And so they're out. They've been out exploring.
Okay.
They are 7 and 8, so they're out on their motorbikes exploring.
And they're at 7 and 8 motorbikes?
Oh yeah, small ones, but yes. They have helmets.
And that's the advantage of living. One of the advantages of living in the country. You can
explore. Right?
Oh,
and you so much more freedom.
Well, exactly. And when I and probably you were growing up, the swimming pool was the cattle dugout. And that's where we went to be cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was growing up, I didn't have a bicycle until I was in college. I didn't ride a bicycle. I still didn't own one then, but I took my horse everywhere. And it wasn't a big thing. I was used to it. That's all we had was horses growing up. And so I would have to get the ironing done or whatever chores my mom had assigned for me. And then I'd grab my horse bareback because too lazy to put a saddle on, and ride over to one of the neighbors' farms and meet up with one of my friends, and we'd go riding.
Yes.
And that's just what we did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're a
Renee-
better rider because you rode bareback too.
I am a better rider. Yes, funny you should say that, because I should know better than what I'm doing. But 2 years ago, we were going to go to Medora, and I had a horse that I just absolutely loved, and had just gotten her back from the trainer, and so was riding her as much as I could. And so that morning, I go out and I throw a saddle on her that's not her normal saddle. I didn't have a keeper between the 2 cinches, and I knew better. I had a new one in the barn. And so I'm out running or riding her, and she does these amazing spins. Just amazing.
Oh,
And so I'm doing my last spin, and this horse turns and looks at me and gives me a snort and the stink eye. Now, don't you think I should have listened to her? No,
yes.
I kicked her instead. Saying, no, you have to finish this spin. And she proceeded to buck me off and off the back. And I ended up in the hospital with 4 broken vertebrae.
Oh,
no.
So, yes, a better horse rider. I should have been. I should have listened. But yeah.
Does that make it difficult? Now, does your body say, I don't know if I want to get on a horse again? Or are you
The body doesn't say that, but the doctor did.
Oh, no.
Renee, I want to go back to the time when you went to high school, and I'm assuming you went to Bismarck, or did you go to St. Mary's or Bismarck High?
I did both.
Okay.
Go ahead.
How were you able to adapt from going to school, to country school, and in your environment, to going into town to school and mixing with those kids?
That was a little hard, because country kids did not go into school, into town school, until they were in the 9th grade. So we went 1st through 8th, graduated from 8th grade country schools, and then 9th grade I went to Simley. All the other kids had been there for 3 years. Everybody knew who the country kids were, because they, pretty much stood out. We dressed differently.
Yes.
I wore hand-me-downs. I was so excited to get hand-me-downs from people, because those were my new clothes.
Yeah.
But and to go from different classrooms, that was totally new to me too, and most all country kids. The girls, it wasn't as bad, I don't think, as it was the boys. Boys were a little harder on each other there. But I remember at Simley, and like I think, or a lot of young girls, you want to be a cheerleader, right? So they were having cheerleader. I did not have a clue what went into this. So they were going to have cheerleader tryouts, and so I signed up. And I go to the auditorium, and I sit down with all the other girls that are there to try out for cheerleading. Well, then they start calling them up there, and you have to have a routine. You don't just get to go up there and do what they tell you to. And I watched the first few, and I go, this is not for me. Because I did not have any kind of cheer routine or anything. The only thing I'd been exposed to was on television as far as cheerleading, but that's what I wanted to do.
How did that go for you?
It went with me walking out.
Yeah. Just as well.
Yeah, it was, because I didn't have anything that I could have done. But I had it in my mind I was going to try.
Sure. Good. Well, that's good. Yeah.
I never did it again.
Did you get involved in any other activities in junior high then?
I was in choir in junior high, but as far as other activities, we had to ride with somebody to town, whether it was my older brothers or what. So we couldn't stay after school. When your ride was ready, you better be ready to go. So, and I had a couple of older brothers at Bismarck High. I remember having to go early a number of days because one of them was sitting detention. And so, we had to go early those days. But other than that, I never drove to school then. I drove out in the country all the time. I had rolled my first car by the time I was 12, but
without a seatbelt.
those weren't even thought about then.
No.
No.
Right.
Yeah. Seatbelts were not thought about at that point. But one of my sisters was in the back seat holding the bag of seeds or something. And we rolled the car and she came out still holding that bag of seeds.
Good.
Really?
Yeah. So she
hung to it for dear life.
She had hung to it for dear life. But then when we went into Bismarck High, you were more on a level playing field as far as you had met a lot of the kids, at Simley. But then kids came in from Hughes. So those were new kids too, but they were new to the others too. But again, you couldn't do a lot of after school activities unless you had lined up transportation.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And
it really was limiting to rural kids to be able to expand on their education outside of the classroom.
It was, and we didn't have buses down our way.
Uh-huh.
So you couldn't ride a bus, not that they would wait for you if you were in sports or any of that kind of thing. But I did in Bismarck High join, I think it was FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America, or Future Homemakers or something like that, one of those clubs. And then I joined the German club because I wanted to go to Germany as part of the school program. And so when I was a senior, we went to Germany with the German club for 21 days.
So had your parents spoke German at home?
My mom spoke German, but it's different German. So it was, you couldn't understand her from what we were taught in school. But my mom and my mom's parents spoke German. So.
And in St. Hildegard's was English spoken there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, except for the Latin that they went through, and they still are kind of going back to that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Renae, now you are in your adult life, you are involved with government, North Dakota government. What inspired you to be a part of that? And can you tell us a little more about your responsibilities?
Okay. So when I was 20, I guess, a friend of mine had talked about applying for the legislature, which, in North Dakota, we meet every 2 years. And so she wanted to be a page there. And so she talked me into applying. So we both applied, and neither one of us were hired initially, but then somebody quit. And my representative, Ted Lang, called me and said, Renae, would you like this position? It's available. So I went to work there. She did not get the job. But I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about politics, except, that President Kennedy had gotten shot and gotten killed and was a good president, and my parents adored him. But as far as that and being involved in politics up to that point, I had not. From there, I stayed. I was 5 sessions in the House of Representatives. And then I took a session or 2 off because I was president of North Dakota Cattlewomen, and you couldn't be politically involved at that point. And then I was asked to come to the Senate. So in 1991, I went to the Senate. In 93, I was asked to be the administrative assistant to the Senate Republican leader, and I've been in that position ever since. And so my duties, oh my goodness, I help hire all the employees for the Senate. I used to do both the House and the Senate, but now I just do the Senate for the Republican side. And I do the scripts for the front desk. I line up confirmation hearings through the governor's office for different appointments that they've made, like the I can't even talk, State Board of Higher Ed, different things like that. They have to be confirmed by the Senate. I work with organizing the memorial service. Every session, we have a memorial service for the legislators that have passed away since the last session. I do the scheduling for the majority leader. I do so many things up there. It's hard to write them all down.
Yeah, you are definitely Friday.
Do you have duties to either to get rid to plan for the session, or then after session's over, then you have more duties to wrap things up? So your time is longer than the sessions?
Yes. We start employment. We'll start beginning November, end of October. And then in December, we have organizational session for 3 days where committees are formed for the legislature. And so the legislature actually meets for 3 days during that time. And then there's training for employees during the month of December. And then the session technically starts in January. The first Tuesday after New Year's Day is when it's supposed to start. And then they can go for 80 days, up to 80 days. This session, we used 75 of those days of legislative days. Now, there were a couple, I think 4 days where we didn't gavel in. So we were there, but it didn't count as legislative days. And then after session, then I have wrap up days to go over everything. Yes.
So how did that change during COVID?
Oh my goodness. During COVID, we did not, normally people come in and testify in person in front of the committees. So they changed all that where they could testify online. Okay. And excuse me, at the legislature, of course, everybody had to use masks and things like that. No schools were allowed to come in and observe the legislature. No visitors. And it was not good because, to have that actual experience of them being there, to be exposed to that is so much better. It was really boring.
Yeah.
Renae, when you look for employees for the legislature, what qualities do you look for?
Well, it depends on the position they're applying for. So the committee clerks, it's gotten a lot more technical. It's not where they used to, take stenography and, shorthand, all that kind of stuff anymore. They use computers now for that. And we have to have somebody who can run the cameras. So they're on screen all the time. Pages, they need to be able to walk around and, deliver items to the legislators' desks and be very personable. Also, legislative employees cannot lobby, so they can't express their opinions on any bill one or way or another. If they're asked by a legislator, then they can. Mainly, we want people that are qualified. It used to be a lot of paybacks for people helping with campaigns and stuff. They got the jobs up there because, they are good jobs. But anymore, we need people that are qualified.
Sure.
And, get them trained in for what they need to do.
Have you know how to work?
Yeah. Which is a lost art.
Yeah.
Have you discovered a change in the abilities or the desires of an employee over the years that you've been there?
Oh, yes. Everybody thinks they can do the job, and they only want to work the hours they want to work and, show up if they want to. Work ethic has really gone down. We have some really amazing employees that have been at the legislature for a while, but like with any other business, we're seeing the work ethic just is not there. And what I am finding, though, is that younger, and I want to say high school age, but homeschool kids are your better candidates for pages or
Mhm.
even some of the committee clerks. They are dedicated. They really have the work ethic. They're respectful. And so those are really kind of choice employees for us, we found.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, viewers, we've had a wonderful chat with Renae Doan, originally from Bismarck, and now lives a few miles east of there at McKenzie with her husband Jerry Doan on their ranch. And so we're getting near to the end of the program, Renae. I'd like to know if you can recall a fun memory of the 50s, please.
Oh gosh, I remember on Halloween.
Oh,
Yeah, my mom would take, because my dad was usually off working because he was a kind of the carpenter. He did everything. He didn't sub things out. He did everything. So
okay.
he wasn't home a lot. But we would take the tractor and hook up the hay wagon, put hay bales on there, and she would load it up with kids, and we'd go around to the different farms and go trick or treating.
Yes.
Cool.
Now we also, okay, so you did the treating, but she also did some tricking because there was, a lot of the outhouses, people had outhouses.
Yes.
So I remember the boys taking logs and sticking them down the holes of the outhouses.
Oh,
And so, I mean, they were stuck out so they could get them out. But I remember them doing that. And I'm thinking, my mom did this.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that was one of the best things we did.
yeah.
And we did a lot of. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, we did a lot of fishing and picnics and, non-electronics type things because we didn't have that. And we traveled in a station wagon with everybody piled in there and no seatbelts.
Yeah, that's right. What from that marvelous time of the 50s and 60s have really impacted your life as an adult?
Well, I save everything. Just ask my kids. Because we had to back then. We reused everything. And so when we got, a box, a bucket, or whatever, we just reused it as many times as we could. We were very frugal. So that's one thing that's really impacted me is to be frugal with your stuff and not just, I can't find this, I'm going to go buy another one just because I can. It's taught, it taught work ethic back then because everybody had to chip in and work. I hated those square hay bales, but we had to do it on a stone boat. But that, that's the thing. Everybody utilized, and we used to visit with other families all the time. We'd go over there and we'd play board games and, things to amuse ourselves.
Sure.
Because that's all we had to do. We did, as you guys probably did too, the old games outside, Red Rover, and, frozen tag and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Those were fun things, and get together for picnics. And so we still like to do a lot of that kind of stuff. But my kids wish I didn't save as much as I do.
Do you have extra storage space on the ranch for your saved items?
Probably nothing extra.
Well, don't ask Jerry that question because he can't get his car in the garage.
Okay.
Threatening me.
You bet. You
just put it wherever you can in whatever building, but it's got another purpose. So
Yeah.
I love it.
You can use it. I'm
Thank you.
moving overboard, but
Thank you, Renae. This has been so much fun.
It's delightful.
To reacquaint with you. We knew of your name through 4-H when we lived in the Minokan area, but now to know you better is just wonderful. Just wonderful.
thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Just a few things to wrap up. I would like to have you look at your viewers. Please look at your screen there, and you notice the blue button that says thumbs up button, that is, and then the red subscribe button. Touch those two, please. And until next time, tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. Until then, toodaloo.